Howdy folks, Jambareeqi here, and welcome to another episode of Jambareeqi Orange, the show where I let my patrons decide what I review. The options for this episode included Space Jam: A New Legacy, Who's Heffalump movie, The Suicide Squad, Paw Patrol the movie, Dune, and Free Guy. They chose Dune. In the faraway future, the universe is ruled over by Emperor Shaddam IV, and the most powerful substance around is a drug called spice melange. The Space Guild fear for the state of spice production, and they command the Emperor to kill Paul of House Atreides, who is tied to a super being experiment and destined to stop all evil. Meanwhile, the sadistic Baron Vladimir Harkonnen orders his evil nephews Glossu and Fade to help organize a conspiracy to take down House Atreides. After Paul's father tragically dies, Paul and his mother unite the natives of the desert planet Arrakis, source of the spice and home to giant sandworms, teaches them how to wield great powers, and leads them in a rebellion against the Emperor and the Harkonnens. I'd just like to say that I watched the 2-hour theatrical cut of this film, not the extended TV version. I've also never read any of the Dune books, so I went into this film completely fresh. As far as I know, the film is like the book in some ways, but also different in other ways. The producers wanted to be faithful to Frank Herbert's world, but director David Lynch had a vision of his own to tell. Which means that we end up with both, a film that feels like a book adaptation, but also indulges in Lynchian eccentricities that kind of stray from the material. I did notice that there's a heavy use of inner monologues or voiceover narration to explain what's happening on screen or get across a character's feelings.
Following the Bene Gesserit tradition, the old Reverend Mother surrendered her life as she surrendered her knowledge. Jessica had successfully transmuted the poisonous water of life.
Every man who has tried has died. Am I the one?
These storytelling techniques work in a written medium like novels, but they don't quite translate well to film, because movies are very visual, and a golden rule of cinema is show don't tell. I guess this is what happens when you make a book adaptation that's too literal. Now, a common complaint against this film is that it's too confusing to follow. Personally, I did have trouble understanding what was going on sometimes. I don't think this is down to the actual story though, because it's quite straightforward on paper. Good guys versus bad guys on a desert planet full of giant worms. It's not that complicated on the surface. But I think what makes the film a bit too much is how it bombards the audience with an overload of information. There's a lot of detail in Dune's lore, and instead of showing us all of this mythology, it's all mainly delivered through expositional dialogue. Not much faith has been put into the movie's world speaking for itself, because it seems movie language is playing second fiddle to spoken dialogue. Which is strange, because this is a film that isn't afraid to rely on visuals artistically. You see, Paul keeps having dreams full of abstract imagery that foreshadow what's ahead, so the film is capable of showing instead of telling. There's a lot of world building to learn in order to get into Dune, I understand that, but dumping it all on casual audiences can make for a less cinematic experience, and well, kind of insulting. That being said, we do sometimes get a profound line that sticks out or a quotable piece of dialogue here or there. There's some golden nuggets to be found in between the rambling monologues and long-winded conversations.
I'll miss the sea. But a person needs new experiences. They jar something deep inside, allowing him to grow.
I'll also admit that the movie does have a pacing problem. The first half is slow and almost meditative. But once Paul and his mum arrive on Arrakis, the movie kicks into hyperdrive, and it's kind of like the rest of the film is a very long montage. Though a lot of this can be chugged down to how this is a 2-hour cut of a 3-hour long movie. So yeah, I don't think this movie is well crafted in terms of storytelling, but I would not say that stops it from being entertaining. I could call this movie many things, but unambitious is not one of them, because it's kind of a miracle that this apparent unfilmable novel got made into a film in the first place. There's a labour of love behind the production that does come through in the finished film. Heck, when you think about it, Universal took a big risk when they chose to hire art house visionary David Lynch to direct their next Hollywood blockbuster. We can argue all we want about whether it paid off, but I wish studios took more chances like this, because that's how we get more unusual films. It's undeniable how surreal and strange this movie can get. It's like this bizarre drug trip at times, and Lynch's odd approach to filmmaking really makes this one of the weirder Hollywood blockbusters out there. The whole movie is very dreamlike in nature, as if we've fallen asleep after reading Frank Herbert's Dune, and this is what our subconscious minds did with the words. Toto and Brian Eno's original music adds to this strangely mesmerizing atmosphere too. Their ghostly compositions have this eerie quality to them that ends up fitting David Lynch's offbeat creative vision. Say what you want about Lynch's Dune, but the soundtrack is kicking, and it's one aspect of the movie that's universally praised. even when the film isn't hypnotically atmospheric, it's often stark raving bonkers, bordering on cartoonish. I'm mainly talking about the Baron and his stooges. These villains are the most memorable part of the film, and you can tell that Lynch enjoyed directing their scenes more than anything with our heroes, because this is where most of the energy and imagination goes to. Whether we're watching the Baron chew the scenery as he floats around in his inflatable suit,
he who controls the spice controls the universe, and what Pida did not tell you is we have control of someone who is very close to Duke Leo.
being creeped out by a sadistic Brad Dourif,
I thought of many pleasures with you. It is perhaps better that you die in the innards of a worm.
or witnessing Sting in a winged codpiece as he smiles menacingly. You are going to remember this film because of weird as bananas characters like this, and the abnormal or sadistic stuff that they do. While I was rarely invested in the main story itself, I did find myself engrossed in the sets and props. There's stunning detail in every background, so much so that I was distracted looking at them half of the time. It's not a traditional or conventional take on the future either. It's like this mix between vintage golden age cinema, 80s perceptions of the future, and otherworldly fantasy. It has hints of sci-fi movies we've seen before, but it's mainly leaning towards doing its own charming thing. Plus, when the film wants to show the scale of a location, it doesn't disappoint, because you really get a grasp of the size of a building or spacecraft. This is the kind of spectacle that Star Wars set the stage for. The special effects are a mixed bag though. I mean, I think it's awesome that they managed to pull off these sandworms through puppetry, huge beastly creatures with billions of sharp teeth. It's so cool that the filmmakers took the big risk of achieving such an ambitious monster using puppets. But the digital effects are where things get kind of iffy. For example, the effects team had to make many characters have blue-tinted eyes to show that they've adapted to this planet. They tried contact lenses, but that didn't pan out for the actors. The end result is a peculiar post-production effect that's more distracting than clever. The technology just wasn't there yet for this kind of effect. Oh, and don't get me started on the force field effects that make actors look like they're cosplaying as holographic Gumby. To conclude, this film's storytelling is hindered by many things, and some aspects of it haven't stood the test of time, but I could never in a million years say that the effort wasn't put in, or that you'll forget about this film the next day. It's very much a passion project, and David's fingerprints help to make it one of the more unique star-studded Hollywood blockbusters from Universal. So, what do you think of David Lynch's Dune? Let everyone know in the comment section below, and don't forget to click that like button. So, what am I going to be reviewing in the next episode of this show? Well, that's entirely up to my patrons, and the options for the next episode include Klaus, West Side Story, All Dogs Christmas Carol, Casper's Haunted Christmas, The Matrix, and Ernest Saves Christmas. Now, don't forget that you have to be a patron in order to access this poll. What is a patron? Don't worry, I'll explain.
This is my Patreon. It's a site for my fans to support me financially on through a monthly basis. Those who donate are called patrons. Patrons can donate as much as they want and are welcome to stop donating anytime. In return for their generosity, patrons are given exciting rewards based on their pledge amount. These rewards include early access to my videos before they go up publicly on YouTube, behind the scenes content, their name in the end credits of my videos, a chance to request a review of anything at all, and much more.
I'm very excited to find out which film my patrons pick next. Cheerio, folks.